Welcome to Humble and Hungry. I'm Emily, and this is my platform to explore the small, intentional things we can do to lead happier and healthier lives. As you may know, on each episode, I share a relatable part of my own health journey and bring in experts or share my research so we can learn more about each topic together. On this episode, we're talking about overeating, food guilt, and binge eating. These experiences are more common than you probably think. And according to today's guest, if you've experienced them, they are not your fault. I asked my followers on Instagram if they related to any of these topics, and it's pretty clear that everyone can relate. First, I asked, have you ever felt overwhelmed around food? And 93% of the respondents said yes. Next, I asked, have you ever felt food guilt? 100% of the respondents said yes. My guest on today's episode is Ingraham, a registered dietitian who helps women overcome food guilt and binge eating. Please join me in welcoming Erica to Humble and Hungry. Hi, and I'm so pleased to welcome Erica Ingraham here to Humble and Hungry with me. Erica, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Me too. So Erica and I connected on Instagram, actually. You can find Erica at Listen Nutrition. So I'll share that on the video. But we connected and I really started to think a lot of your content was really beneficial to my audience. So I'm kind of dedicating my whole YouTube channel to like small intentional things people can do in their everyday lives to like feel healthier and live healthier. So I thought you'd be a great guest. So I'm so glad you're here. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm so excited to be here today. So my name is Erica Ingraham. As you said, I'm a registered dietitian and intuitive eating coach, and I help people overcome binge eating, manage emotional eating, overcome food guilt, and learn how to eat in a way that actually feels good in their body, physically and mentally.
Okay, and that's really a whole spectrum of things. It's food guilt, probably all the way to binge eating, I would guess is the spectrum. So how common is that?
Yes, such a great question. So binge eating is actually a lot more common than we think. Binge eating disorder is actually the most common eating disorder in the United States. It's over 3 times more common than anorexia and bulimia combined. So it's incredibly common, and many people who struggle with binge eating feel like they are the only one. So I want everybody to know that if these are things that you're struggling with today that we're going to be talking about, you are not alone. And it is totally possible to overcome these struggles and develop a positive relationship with food and your body. So binge eating, that's a little bit about binge eating disorder. It's very common. Now, this feeling overwhelmed around food, feeling food guilt, disordered eating is also incredibly common, and it's something that often goes unrecognized and undiagnosed in our society because of the cultural messaging that we all receive around food and bodies. We are encouraged to restrict and to adopt, feel bad about ourselves, feel bad about our eating choices and our bodies. So it leads into this disordered, dysfunctional relationship with food and body image. So many people may not even realize that it's not normal to feel that way. They may feel like, well, I need to just be tough on myself if I want to be healthy. And so I want to help change that narrative and help people see that they actually can get to a place where they're feeling good in their body, physically and mentally, where they're not thinking about food constantly, where they're not body checking and worrying about weight gain, where they can actually be present in their lives, like enjoy a spontaneous meal out with their loved ones without stressing about it.
Yeah, and I love that you're sort of dedicated to this issue because I don't think until recently people ever addressed it, like even socially with their girlfriends or whatever. It almost felt like a taboo topic to talk about, like feeling overwhelmed around food or like binge eating. It was never something you saw, like you'd see other self-care tips and things out there. So would you say there's like a new attention towards this kind of?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. And I think The narrative around binge eating for so long has been, if this is something you're struggling with, it means you lack willpower. It means you lack self-control. It means something's wrong with you. So what that has led to is people hiding and people isolating themselves and not talking about it with each other because they feel like they're the only ones. And so I 100% agree with you that it is almost like this taboo topic. And so also another point here is that other forms of disordered eating and eating disorder have gotten a lot more attention. Right. So when someone thinks of eating disorder, I think usually our minds go to someone who is struggling with anorexia, for example. And it's not often that we talk about people who are struggling with feeling that loss of control around food.
Yeah, I agree. So I know in some of your content that I've seen, you've shared how if someone, binge eats or feels overwhelmed around food, it's not their fault. And I think you kind of just touched on that, talking about like willpower a little bit. Can you kind of just like give like a summary of like why it's not someone's fault if this happens, like why it's more than that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So from the time that we were young, we got the message that overeating, feeling out of control around food, emotional eating is bad. We've gotten that message that if this is something that you do, it means that you are just not dedicated enough to yourself. It means that you're unmotivated. It means you're lazy. It means you lack willpower. So we have, because of this messaging we've received, a lot of us have the belief system that this is true. We have bought into that idea. And what that does is lead to guilt. It leads to shame. And also what many people don't realize is the guilt and the shame fuels the binge cycle and makes that binge cycle worse. So I want everybody here to know that binge eating actually has nothing to do with willpower, like you've been led to believe. Binge eating, what it actually is a survival and coping mechanism. So the reason why binges happen is because your body is sensing some form of threat. It's your body's way of trying to protect you against a real or perceived threat. And that threat can come usually in one of two forms. So one is that physiological binge. So when your body is sensing that there's not enough energy coming into your body, or there's even the potential for an energy shortage. And then there's the emotional binge that happens when you are emotionally dysregulated. Your nervous system is dysregulated and it's seeking a way to feel calm, to feel safe, to feel protected. So in working with clients over the years, I find that usually folks are struggling with both of these things. They are deprived from the energy that their body needs on a physical level, but also binge eating has been in some ways, very helpful coping mechanism for them over the years and has helped them regulate their nervous system. And so in a sense, I feel like people who struggle with binge eating really, they struggle with this because in one way, the binges are helping them. It is helping them feel that sense of calm, relief in the moment, but then it's followed by this spiral of guilt and shame. So I really want people to understand what binge eating is at its core. And I find that understanding the root cause of why the binges are happening in the first place can allow people to release that guilt and shame that they're currently feeling.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for explaining that. I think that's really powerful. And as someone who's definitely had like weight struggles up and down my whole life, I totally relate to that. And can people have like different, like almost like thresholds for this happening, like at different times in their life? Is it
Yes.
situational?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. So many of the clients that I work with can remember an event in their life or time in their life when binge eating became a way that their body became something that their body turned to. So for example, some people found that early in their childhood, binge eating was a way for them to cope with difficult experiences at home. And when you're a child, you have very few coping mechanisms available to you. You don't have a lot of say in things that happen in your day-to-day life. So many of my clients have found that when they were children, that binge eating helped them feel that sense of calm and relief and control. And their body adapted to that. It was serving them at a certain point in their life. And now that they've moved into adulthood, many of them come to me because they feel, on the one hand, it feels good in the moment, but it's just not working anymore. It's just not actually helping me fix my problems. It's making me feel worse. I'm not feeling good physically. I'm not feeling good mentally. So that's a sign that, okay, we need to show your body that it doesn't need to use this coping strategy anymore to protect you. And yes, there can be other traumatic life events that trigger our bodies to turn to binge eating to feel that sense of regulation. So when we're in a state of chronic stress and overwhelm, our fight or flight system is activated. What binge eating can do is help bring us into the relaxation part of it, the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps relax our body, which helps get us feeling that more sense of balance.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So you started to talk a little bit about like the warning signs, like someone might have like start to have binge or overeat. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like what are some warning signs you might feel?
Absolutely. And the warning signs, I think, can vary so much, and it really depends on the individual. What I find is a common mistake people make when they're trying to get out of this cycle is they zoom in on the actual binge itself. And they may start to notice the intense cravings coming up. They may start to notice they're thinking about that ice cream in the freezer, and they then will try to stop themselves from eating it, try to distract themselves, trying to talk themselves out of it, trying to use willpower. This is when people are trying to use their willpower to prevent it or to fight it. And what that actually does is make the binges worse. It actually increases that feeling of scarcity in the body and drives you towards the binge. So what I hope my clients do is to actually take a step back and zoom out and look at what is leading up to these binge urges in the first place. And we know that it doesn't have to do with a lack of willpower, it doesn't have to do with a lack of self-control. Is it something in the eating pattern that is making the body feel deprived? Are they not meeting their energy needs? Are they not eating enough satisfying foods? Are there mental restrictions going on? Mental restrictions can sound like, I will not eat the ice cream this week. It's a weekend food, or, that's reserved for the cheat day. So all of these kind of mental restrictions actually can fuel that binge cycle later on.
Wow, that's so interesting. So, okay, so I guess taking like a step ahead of it now, let's say someone like overeats and they're feeling like guilt and shame about it. What can they do to move forward? Like, how can you just say, okay, I'm going to stop dwelling on this and move forward? Like, what do you recommend people do?
Yes, this is such a great question. And that feeling that comes after a binge, after, you initially you have the binge, you might feel that sense of relief. And then the part that comes afterwards, it just feels awful, right? That overwhelming flood of guilt and shame. You're also on top of that feeling very physically uncomfortable, bloated, right? Low energy. And so it's a flood of really uncomfortable feelings that come up. So I do recommend that there are some steps that we can absolutely take in this situation to get ourselves feeling better more quickly. So number one, we always want to remember and really internalize the message that binge eating is not a sign of failure. It's not a sign that you messed up. That's usually where your brain starts to go first, right? Is I blew it. I totally screwed up. I told myself I wasn't going to do this. I did it anyway. What's wrong with me? Everybody else can eat normally except for me. So this is what I call the guilt and shame spiral. And so to avoid that, what we want to do is look at binge eating as, look, this is I binged because my body had an unmet need, and that's okay. It's a sign of an unmet need. It's not something that you did bad. It's not a, you didn't do something morally wrong. It's simply a sign that your body's trying to get your attention. So I think that neutralizing that the way that you're thinking about the binge process is really important. The second step is to make yourself more comfortable. Do something kind for your body. So that might be putting on some comfortable clothes. It might be connecting with someone, talking to a best friend on the phone. It might be going for a walk. It might be curling up with a book that you enjoy. So even if you're feeling awful, if you're feeling that physical discomfort, guilt, and shame, what can I do to make myself more comfortable? What can I do to be kind to myself in this moment? And what that will do is help pull you out of the guilt and shame spiral and get you feeling better more quickly.
It's almost like you're saying, like, forgive yourself for it, right? Like,
yes. And forgive yourself. And I think it even goes a step further than that, because if we have to forgive ourselves, it means that we've done something wrong. It means that we have sinned, we have failed ourselves. And I want to change that narrative and I want people to change that narrative for themselves, that you didn't mess up. Even if you binge every single day for the rest of your life, you are not a bad person. You are not doing anything wrong. So I think forgive yourself. I think we want to even take it a step further of, what do I need to feel sorry about, right? Like, I didn't do anything bad. Yeah, this is my body's way of telling me that it's feeling a threat. Like, what can I do to support my body in this moment?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Important. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think people will get a lot from that. And I think in the beginning, we were saying like the whole spectrum of how far someone could be impacted by this, like those tips would apply to anyone, right? Like those.
Yes, right. So whether you are struggling with clinical binge eating disorder or you are feeling guilty around food, wherever you fall on the spectrum, your struggles are valid and you deserve to get support and help for those struggles. I think many people don't get the help they need because they feel that they don't deserve it. They feel like they're not worthy of it. And they feel like, well, if I just keep following this diet, if I just keep being rigid and tough on myself, it's going to work this time. And what I want everybody to know is that the diet that you've tried in the past that didn't work, that was not your fault. That it was not because you lack willpower. That diet didn't work because of the nature of the restriction that comes when we try to follow protocols and plans. It's your body's way of trying to protect you. So if any of this is resonating with you, if you struggle with food guilt, if you feel shame about your body, shame about your eating habits, if you're feeling like you're either ravenous or extremely full, you don't know how to listen to your hunger cues, wherever like any of that is resonating with you, there is a way to work through that. And there is a way that you can get to a place where you're listening to your body, you're eating without overthinking it, and you're no longer feeling guilt and shame after eating or around food.
Okay, thank you. And if someone wants to find more from you, where can you be found on the internet?
Yeah, well, I love connecting with people online. So you can feel free to send me a DM over on Instagram at Listen Nutrition. I'm also on TikTok, same handle name at Listen Nutrition. So yeah, I hope to connect with everyone who's watching this video today. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here. And I also wanted to share, you also offer a free course too through your Instagram.
Yes.
So
thank you. Yes.
About that.
Yeah. So it's on my website, listennutrition.com. You can access the free course there. You can also access it through my Instagram and TikTok bio. And the course is 4 steps to eat sugar without binging on it. So it's for you if you feel like every time you're eating sweets, you are just losing control and blowing past your fullness cues. If you're feeling a lot of guilt and shame around food, this course is for you. And you actually did it yourself, right?
I did do it. And I was taking notes the whole time. I thought it was so, I'm definitely someone who I think has been at all parts of that spectrum at different times. So I relate to it and I thought it was really helpful. So I want to make sure people know it's there in case they want to use it.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much. And I'm glad that you found it helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much for being here. I think everyone will take away a lot from it, and you'll probably hear from some of my followers too, I hope.
Yeah, I would love to. So thank you so much.
Alrighty, bye-bye. Thank you so much to Erica for joining me here on Humble and Hungry. I'm so grateful you're dedicated to educating women on these impactful experiences. Again, if you want to find Erica online, you can find her on Instagram and TikTok at Listen Nutrition. It's time now for our Humble and Hungry Happy Thoughts. Today's Humble and Hungry Happy Thoughts are really dedicated to being kind to yourself. The first is, you have peace when you make it with yourself. The next quote is, be kind to yourself. And then let your kindness fill the world. Thank you so much for joining me here on Humble and Hungry. We'll see you next time.